Bling blong, everyone. Our new podcast miniseries, Talking Mission Hill, is now exclusively on Patreon.
Put on your spicy pants every Friday with a new podcast covering each episode of the cult series from Simpsons legends Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein.
$5 subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons can hear every episode, plus all of our previous miniseries about Futurama, King of the Hill, and The Critic.
So don't be a Beardsley. Sign up for Talking Mission Hill today.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where every yippee is Skippy. I am one of your hosts, the sentient pair of talking legs, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Well, hi, it's Henry Gilbert, and I'm all about using clips from Star Wars without permission.
And it saves you money, too. Today's episode is the Muppet Babies episode, The Great Muppet Cartoon Show.
Good animation is perfect and organized.
That's right. Hey, how'd they get a clip of our cartoon on this show? From 40 years ago almost. Yikes.
Ooh.
Yes, so before we get started, this episode is a request from one of our high-level patrons, Alex Irish, who's requested things in the past. And Alex says, quote, if you're of a certain generation, odds are you grew up seeing a ton of Muppet Babies and reruns on Nickelodeon. Henry and I are much older, by the way. We saw these on CBS in the 80s.
First run, we saw them, yeah.
So he goes on to say, while it hasn't aged the best and is certainly of its time, we remember it as a better-than-average TV cartoon that heralded the babies renaissance of the 80s and 90s. And this episode is a perfect pick for the podcast, a cartoon about cartoons making cartoons. And yes, thank you, Alex. I knew we'd get around to it at some point because this was a massive behemoth of the 80s and also of the 90s and reruns. So today we're talking about Muppet Babies. Woo. And before we start, Henry, I know several Muppet Babies anecdotes from your childhood already that are preloaded. I know.
I'm going to share a few of them here, but yeah,
you were platforming for Muppet Babies.
I really was. Muppet Babies was, I think, my first favorite cartoon. Like before I even really liked He-Man. Like I got into He-Man, so I was born in 82. By the time I got into He-Man at age like 5 or 6, when I know the dates of how He-Man toys were released, I know that was actually the downslope of He-Man, and He-Man was a lot less popular. Same with Transformers. But Muppet Babies was the first one I really got into, and I think it was because of the bright colors and all the fun babies and the songs, and also the marketing. I would like to think that I could discern at that age that it was animated better than most things I was seeing in 80s cartoons, but I don't know. I don't want to put too much credit on my childhood self.
Maybe some part of your brain knew, like, this is moving more, so I'm more interested in this as a child.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I had stuffed toys of, I think we definitely had a Kermit and a Fozzie. I want to say I had a Gonzo, but definitely a Kermit and a Fozzie toy. So many of the toys, all the babies, I loved them. I can recall very strongly how much I was into the Muppet Babies. That is, I believe, was in first grade in Arkansas elementary school. This would make it 1989 or 88. And we're having school on a Saturday to make up for like a few snow days the kids had, which I think back on that, like, who the fuck cares? Like, kids had 3 fewer days of class. Who cares?
That's 3 days of precious fraction knowledge they won't have.
I mean, it's really just about, like, you know, punitive pressure on children. And but anyway, Saturday school. In the morning, they're actually letting us watch some cartoons before we start doing the class. And they leave it up like kind of democratically to which of the 3 channels we're going to watch. And I know I threw a little tantrum, a righteous tantrum, about how at least one of those Saturdays, they wouldn't do Muppet Babies. They wanted to watch something that I viewed as far inferior to Muppet Babies, and I was very angry. I couldn't believe a kid would want to watch something other than Muppet Babies when Muppet Babies was on.
You should have had a PowerPoint or whatever the equivalent was in 1988, let's say.
This taught me to be more strident in my views and be able to explain it better to authority figures. But yes, that is how much I loved the Muppet Babies back then.
I love them too, and I think because my brain is poison, my earliest memories involve watching television. So one of my earliest memories is being aware that it was the year 1984. So I was like, before I was 3, probably, that had to be. So I was watching Scooby-Doo, and I was aware it was the year 1984. That's like a vague, fuzzy memory in my head. But then another fuzzy memory I have is watching this show. I can see the shitty apartment we lived in on the shitty couch I was sitting on, and it seemed like, I think at this point there were hour-long blocks of it on Saturday mornings, or sometimes longer. It seemed like there was just infinite Muppet Babies. Like, it was the longest stretch of time ever. But yeah, I loved watching it Saturday mornings. Even when cartoons got better and edgier and funnier, I would still watch Muppet Babies on Nickelodeon in the early to mid 90s, like as almost nostalgia for like 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I could still watch Muppet Babies, and it was like a warm, fuzzy feeling, even though I was also watching like Ren and Stimpy at the same time. So I was watching those Nickelodeon reruns too.
Muppet Babies was written at just a slightly higher level than Sesame Street or other truly baby shows, that if you were like 10, you could still convince yourself that it wasn't all softness. But yeah, by the early 90s, when the series was wrapping up but the reruns are still on, I had pretty much moved on to being a Fox Kids child and Tiny Toons and all that, but I'd still tune back into Muppet Babies now and then. Same with the Nickelodeon reruns for like you said, like 11-year-old nostalgia. Like
I remember 1988. Boy, that was fun. So now let's talk about the history of Muppet Babies. And before I begin, I want to say the YouTube channel Defunct Land, I believe it was last year, they did a great multi-part YouTube history of the Muppets, and that includes this show, and that will provide you with a ton of context as to where this show falls in the Muppets timeline and just where the Muppets came from and how just truly big they were when this show began. Because some brief context, like the Muppets ruled the mid 70s to about the early to mid 80s. They were like a major pop culture presence. And when we were growing up, when we were kids, it was definitely like the decline of the Muppets and the mass marketing of the Muppets because they were no longer the hot thing. Like go back to the Troy McClure episode of The Simpsons, Dad, What's a Muppet? That was where the Muppets were in the 90s.
Defunct Land is like a 6-hour-long documentary just on the life of Jim Henson, and we got to experience the tail end of it as kids, but I think for both of us, when we really got into Muppet content, it was after Jim Henson passed away.
Definitely.
And yeah, like from that documentary, learning how the Muppet show was the most popular thing in the world for a time. Feels crazy now because the Muppets can barely get to have a TV show on Disney Plus now.
Yeah, and it really feels like Muppet Babies was the perfect storm because all of our boomer parents were like smoking weed and watching Dirty Puppets on TV in the 70s. It's like, well, now you're a family, now you have kids. This is a way to get them into the fun puppets you loved. And I remember my mom like pushing Muppets on me and watching the Muppet Show with me, and my mom.
Oh yeah, my mom too. Yeah,
watching things like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and she was way into Muppets, and I think still is. Lots of fond Muppet memories. But this feels like the perfect show for the boomers, you know, growing up more out of their young adulthood, having families, and like turning their kids onto the Muppets via this cartoon.
Yeah, you know, we have that today with pretty much every cartoon has a new version of that we grew up with, has a new version of that cartoon that you can watch with your kids, including Muppet Babies,
this,
actually.
Yeah. That's crazy. So some brief context. So again, Muppet Show, like 75, 76 is when it started, exploding, like worldwide fame. The Muppets are on talk shows and everything. There are 3 Muppet movies. The last one comes out in 1984. I mean, the last one of that trilogy.
Yeah, the Muppets, I mean, we get to see the TV shows that were saved and the films that were made, but those are just like part of the machine. Like the Muppets were these living characters that could appear anywhere. Like they would be talk show staples or game shows, or just like, you know, if Kermit showed up, you didn't have to wait for a new episode of the Kermit show to see Kermit somewhere. Kermit could show up anywhere and you'd just be excited. Like, oh, the Muppets are here at this award show. Wow, the Muppets are giving an Emmy here. Miss Piggy karate chop Johnny Carson, you know?
That's what killed him eventually. But yeah, so what's interesting though, and I mean, I guess the writing was on the wall for me in retrospect, but the Defunctland series really points out that, and also the great Jim Henson biography that came out in like the mid-teens is very good too.
Yeah,
check that out.
Which I would bet is a primary source for that documentary.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a lot of my memories from that too. So like Jim Henson, after the Muppets Take Manhattan, which he let Frank Oz direct, he's just like, I'm stepping away from the Muppets. Jim Henson was done with the Muppets, with the cast of the Muppets. He did that for about 10 years. I mean, Kermit had existed since the 50s technically, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So he wanted to do more adult things, and he did. He did in the 80s, while basically saying, okay, I was a little uptight about marketing and stuff and merchandising, but now merchandising the hell out of the Muppets will give me the money I need to make these more obscure adult, you know, things with less of a reach. So he made The Dark Crystal, a massive failure on a grand scale that thankfully just came back with a Netflix series that I hear is kind of boring, but also very fun to look at.
I should give that a watch. Dark Crystal bored me as a kid and
Me
as
too.
a teen. I mean, you've seen those clips out there of the original cut that is like way less dialogue.
Yeah,
and
it's actually, the dialogue's in another language. It's in the made-up language. Yeah.
That sounds incredibly distracting and weird, but the type of thing, that's the crazy hippie spirit part of Jim Henson that you do fall in love with as, you know, an appreciator of an artistic person. But there's two sides to Jim Henson. He's also a very the way he made it into the world of making Muppets was making commercials. Like he was a guy who made commercials.
He was very much like a Walt Disney figure, where on the outside seems warm and approachable, but on the inside he's like a capitalist. He's just like, I know how to make money. And he was funding these projects that really were massive failures. Like another one is Labyrinth, which I grew up thinking, oh, everyone loves Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Everyone has seen Labyrinth. No, everyone hated Labyrinth. No one saw Labyrinth. It was a hit on VHS, and it was like the movie like every girl liked when I was growing up.
It was a girl favorite in my childhood as well. I don't think I watched Labyrinth until after there was a Muppet Babies episode that had multiple clips from Labyrinth in it. And I feel like within 6 months of that, they played Labyrinth at some school sick day or whatever. They bring in the VHS machine, and we watched Labyrinth. And I remember having a thought of like, the Muppet Babies were with these characters. I remember them now.
The Muppet Babies felt like they were doing PR for a lot of movies.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I recall one episode had a lot of clips of the Steve Martin movie Roxanne.
That's right.
Because
what a weird thing.
They were also doing the Cyrano de Bergerac story too, and they were like relying on clips of a Steve Martin movie no one remembers, but that was like a year after that movie came out. So weird.
If you're a Muppet Babies writer, Cyrano de Bergerac Gonzo is right there. You know? You gotta reach for that low hanging fruit.
Well, they need like 4 minutes to kill of non-animation, and Steve Martin will help you out without permission. And it goes without saying, and this might seem like a daring statement, but no Muppet thing was more profitable in the 80s than this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, period. Merchandising, TV ratings, nothing. Like, Jim Henson tried so many things in the 80s. Like, those movies were failures. The Storyteller was his prestige series that I kind of want to revisit. It's on Amazon Prime right now. But it wasn't made to make a lot of money. It was this thing made to sink money into for a prestige product.
Well, I think you get a sense for most of his 80s stuff that Henson was in search of prestige and not being the green felt puppet guy. You know, he wants to be an Oscar-winning filmmaker, not just a guy who makes kid stuff. You and me have talked about this so many times, but a smaller version of this is Joel Hodgson. Like he didn't want to be Mystery Science Theater guy anymore.
It's so frustrating. It's like once you find out what people love about you and what you do, you just do that. Just keep doing that until you die. That is your lot in life.
Accept it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so Muppet Babies, the history is very, very brief. because I think a lot of it is hidden, and I'll tell you my theory very soon.
Oh boy.
So this all begins with the 1984 movie, The Muppets Take Manhattan, and there is a segment in the movie that is a flashback to all the Muppets in a nursery as little babies, and Baby sings the doo-wop song, I'm gonna always love you.
Right. It instantly connects doo-wop to the Muppet Babies, which is why the theme song is a doo-wop song.
And all the character designs are there. They are just the characters you will see in the cartoon. So the cartoon is September. This movie is July of 84.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes.
Then that is really planned there. Then
Yes, exactly.
When I first saw Muppets Take Manhattan as a kid, I only focused on the Muppet Babies.
That's all I remember, and it blew my mind because I saw it after Muppet Babies.
And eventually, though, as somebody who cared more about canon and continuity, I think Miss Piggy presents it as like, I wish I knew you when we were a baby, and that makes it a fantasy sequence.
Yeah.
So the Muppet Babies are non-canon. They're actually Miss Piggy fanfic.
I watched that segment again. It is cutesy poo bullshit, but it's very adorable and it's very appealing. The character designs are great. You can see why they stuck with them. So I'm getting there's not a lot of history on this. And like in the Defunctland video about Muppet Babies, very little of it is about Muppet Babies, and the history is about 3 minutes of content, which is pulled from like the official sources. Like, there are this many episodes. This is the guy who wrote the episodes, etc. It's like there's not a lot of interviews on the subject. Like, nobody really cares that much about this show.
Yeah, the Defunctland, again, great series, but presenting it as Muppet Babies. Muppet Babies is more of like the sinew that connects just talking about a 7-year, 8-year period of Jim Henson up until his passing in 90.
And you have to name videos like that on YouTube because no one's going to click on part 8 or whatever. No one has the patience for that, unfortunately. So there's a lot of conflicting stories about this. The main through line is the response to this baby scene was so strong that CBS began petitioning Jim Henson to let them air an animated series based on this premise. That doesn't seem right to me because, again, the movie came out in July. You can't get a 13-episode order ready for September in 2 months.
Absolutely not. Even in the cheap old fly by the seat of your pants days of the 80s, you can't ship that stuff to Japan and get it back in 3 months. Like, even if they wrote all the scripts in a day and boarded them in a week, like, no, you couldn't do that.
Even with as much padding as there is in these episodes, they couldn't do it. So, and then I thought, like, well, maybe it could also be like, what if the response to these characters was from test screenings, and that it was so high at test screenings that they were like, we need to do something with these guys. That could be possible, but also I'm not sure when the movie was test screened. I don't know if that would give them enough lead time, but I do know, according to the Defunctland video, and this is sourced with like newspaper articles, there was Muppet Babies merchandise before the Muppets Take Manhattan even came out in theaters.
Oh, all right.
So my idea is Jim Henson is loosening up his morals, I guess. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, I want to do these adult things. I'm making the Dark Crystal now. Frank Oz is kind of the Muppet guy now. I'm going to squeeze some money out of these felt fuckers, and I want to get as much as possible. So he's thinking up ideas that could be very marketable. The baby thing is marketable, and that is why he approaches Frank Oz to supervise that segment. It is Frank Oz's movie. He completely rewrote the script to make it darker and more emotional. Mm. He's in charge of it, and he does not want to dumb the Muppets down or make them appeal to a juvenile audience. But Jim's like, hey, Frank, I've got an idea. And he's like, and I want to supervise it. And Frank is like, well, what's your idea? It's like, oh, it's the baby thing. And he can't say no to Jim Henson. So Jim Henson is sort of not sabotaging, but just planting a seed of like the money tree in this movie that will grow into like an 8-year series that will get him millions.
Muppets Take Manhattan is a lot, in general, is a lot more serious of a, I mean, it's not serious, but it's more serious than like the Muppet movie is silly and all over the place and has way more like puns and fourth wall breaking and all that. But like in the Muppets Take Manhattan, they just get really sad and break up.
Yeah.
And they get tortured by Kermit losing his memory and becoming a total sellout, working to sell ivory soap, pretty much. Yeah.
All of those movies run together in my head because I don't think I ever sat down and watched one as an adult. And I don't know if I had the patience for them as a kid, you know, because I was so used to the Muppet Show, and I didn't know who Orson Welles was and why he was so important.
I've watched the Muppet movie by itself many, many times, but not less so The Great Muppet Caper and Muppet Takes Manhattan. I mean, for me, I just remember seeing Muppets Take Manhattan as like the Saturday afternoon movie with commercials in between. I don't think I've ever actually seen it from beginning to end in like one sitting.
Well, now they're all on Disney Plus, so knock yourself out.
But yeah, you're right. I think Henson totally. Yeah, he let Frank Oz rewrite and darken the thing, but he insisted on like putting his little commercial in here of all the cute Muppet Babies.
Yeah.
And I guess, if they were merchandising it like a year earlier, then I would think that he's probably hearing from like, well, we can't put like Kermit on a diaper, but we could put baby Kermit on a diaper. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I think, with how lovable and huggable Jim Henson is, the crunchy hippie who brought us all adorable puppets, we want to think like, no, they naturally wrote this thing, and then, it became a big hit because people wanted more of it. No, I honestly think it was a cynical choice to put marketing for upcoming products in a television show in a movie, and no one is telling that story on record. Like, the timeline doesn't make sense to me.
That doesn't really fit with the mythology we all want to feel about Jim Henson, as this tragic figure lost too soon and just this artistic guy. I think he did great. Though all of his commercials are great. I think he did great. The LaChoy Dragon is one of my favorite things ever. Like, there's this one of the LaChoy Dragon yelling at a dad who's confused about how to cook, and he's like, "Hey!" and he just like shoves him in the chest. It's so funny.
I love Wilkins and Wokins and all the gun violence in those commercials. It's like, I'm going to shoot you in the head.
This is how we're selling coffee now, with guns.
Blammo. But yeah, so the history of Muppet Babies is like, the cynical seed was planted in this movie. And then Jim Henson met with CBS and Marvel Productions for one meeting. They figured out what the show would be, and that's Muppet Babies. That's the history of Muppet Babies. It's super cynical, but Saturday morning TV at this point was just a fucking hellhole. All the cartoons were awful. This was also built to sell toys, don't get me wrong, but they wanted a little more of a high-minded approach. So Jim Henson was like, it's got to be about the power of imagination and overcoming childhood fears and exposing kids to different ideas that will, enlighten them. Sort of like a little more commercialized Sesame Street.
Yeah, I think when you compare it to, not that Sesame Street doesn't sell a shitload of merchandise, but yeah, when you compare it to Sesame Street or like Fraggle Rock, those are much more straightforward and just like, this is a lesson we want kids to learn. Either Sesame Street with like direct like math or alphabet lessons, or Fraggle Rock with stories of empathy and understanding. Muppet Babies still does want to like inspire creativity instead of just consuming, but it has to get pushed back a little farther to make room for all the baby bullshit they have to sell. I watched a few episodes that are on YouTube for this, which, by the way, that's the only way you listeners can watch it. But I watched a few, and I was impressed by how many times they're like, now the babies decide to draw something or make up their own story or come up with their own ideas. Like, it really is about giving children inspiration to be creative, which, especially in the 80s, like the Transformers cartoons are not telling you to be creative. Or G.I. Joe would stick on a thing at the very end that's like, also, look both ways crossing the street. Anyway.
Stay out of that fridge, jackass.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have a really good point, because like the scripts for these shows are almost like free association, in that you just kind of observe these characters as they quietly do one thing that the episode is based around, and then it's like, the end of the episode, it's like, oh, I'm tired, let's go to bed now. There's no arc, there's no like real storytelling. It's like, and I think that's what made it approachable to children, because it's like, there's not a lot of things you have to remember. Just like, you're quietly observing these colorful and funny characters as they do a thing that you could also do at home in many cases. This was produced by Marvel Productions.
We've talked about them many times.
Yes, and I believe we did a big bio on them for the G.I. Joe episode, correct?
Yeah, and also Spider-Man and their amazing friends.
Yeah.
His amazing friends, not their amazing friends.
But so Marvel Productions basically had Toei in their pocket, Toei Animation, and that is essentially how the show was animated for its first 3 seasons and some change, and then ACOM took over. Yeah,
that was usually what happened with the Spider-Man shows that preceded this. Like, Marvel Productions, it was the hollowed out husk of Friz Freeling's old
That's right.
thing, and then Marvel bought it, with the express plan of just making their own cartoon starring the Hulk and Spider-Man and Spider-Woman. And yeah, early they got Toei, and like on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, they kind of priced themselves out of Toei, and only in the second season could they afford 3 episodes by Toei, but most of the rest were done by like Don Yang and other lower budgeted Korean studios. This again, I always want to be careful of not saying like Japanese people draw better than Korean people. That's not what I'm saying, but money wise, Marvel was not paying for the same number of cells for a Toei episode as they were for an ACOM episode of something.
And a hallmark of this series was because, animation was still cheap, even though the animation in the show is fairly good for what it is.
Oh, yeah.
They have to pad it out with about 2 to 3 minutes of existing footage, often public domain, but often, how about Star Wars? How about Raiders of the Lost Ark? I mean, Star Wars is just... Oh, also, sorry, both of those movies are just baked into the opening, right?
Yeah, it's always there in the opening.
The X-Wing or the TIE Fighter? Which one is it?
TIE Fighter is chasing Gonzo. Yeah. And that had to be the first time I saw Star Wars.
Oh, me too.
Anything from Star Wars. So it indoctrinated me in that way as well. Like I would bet it was just a handshake deal between Henson and Lucas, who were working on stuff together. I mean, they'd already been working since back to Yoda on stuff.
Yeah. And it's like they might have to, I mean, I don't know if they'd have to renegotiate now. Disney doesn't own Indiana Jones, do they?
I was just talking about this with my husband last night when we saw that Indiana Jones footage.
Is that a Fox movie?
Well, no. So I think it is that.
Oh, Paramount, sorry.
Yeah. They own the character Indiana Jones and can make more things with Indiana Jones because Lucasfilm owned that character. But the films that starred him were released by Paramount, so I think they at least in part own it. So they need to buy that back from Paramount. I think that is a situation. So Disney now can make their own Indiana Jones stuff and make Harrison Ford shuffle around, sadly, if they want to.
There's also stuff in this episode, and I'm sure several others, where I'm like, where did this come from? And who made this, and are you paying them?
I remember seeing some old internet factoid. The internet of the 2000s was pointing out things about Muppet Babies that freaks you out. But
I will say every joke has been made about Muppet Babies. We will not be making new jokes in this show. I'm sorry.
But I remember reading a bit of trivia that one of the clips they cut to of like a claymation monster was actually from a 70s like skin flick called Flesh Gordon.
Whoa.
And it's the only time like a porno technically appeared on Muppet Babies one time. Wow. And it's clips like that make it impossible to release now.
It's funny that like the most history I found on this show online, like even like an interview, was about the character of Skeeter, who is the female character they added because it's like, well, Muppets was a boys club. The only female character is not a good representation of women.
A monstrous drag performance of a violent lech, basically, in Miss Piggy.
So essentially they just created a Smurfette style character that was outgoing and a problem solver compared to the nerdy Scooter. And also we'll get into the voices, but also Howie Mandel does the Bobby from Bobby's World voice, and Bobby's World is just Muppet Babies, right? He does all the imagination bullshit.
Film Roman just ripped it off. Yeah, you're right. I think on Bobby's World we talked about how Howie Mandel openly jokes about like, it's all the same voice. I have one voice. Gizmo from Gremlins, Skeeter, and Bobby are all the same voice.
It's a good voice, but it turns out Frank Welker can imitate it almost perfectly.
Yeah, why are they paying all this money for Howie when they got Frank Welker, who can basically sub in anybody? Like, he became Scooby-Doo because he's like, I can also do Scooby-Doo. He does Garfield because he's like,
right.
I'll just do that too.
No one can replace Lorenzo Music, though. I'm sorry.
Impossible. Yeah.
There's a big like Skeeter contingent online who wants Skeeter back, but there is Skeeter resistance because the Muppet brand wants to distance itself from the babies because especially before the Muppet Babies reboot in 2018, they were like, no, Muppets are for adults. We're trying to make these for adults. Those movies are for adults and families, and the new show on ABC is an adult show.
Oh yeah.
So they wanted to just like push the baby shit away until they realized the adult stuff wasn't really working. They're like, you know what? Let's make the baby shit again.
Will we make money on the babies now? Let's do that again, I guess. Yeah, but by that point, Skeeter had been just shoved to the background. Like, though I like the concept of her is that it is like they make Scooter even nerdier than he was on the Muppets. Like he's like an annoying gopher, but he's supposed to be the guy who's like starstruck. Basically, Scooter was created for like Jim Henson to make fun of Richard Hunt being a little kid among them. But this turns Scooter into just a Megazoid dork because Skeeter is supposed to be the active one. And she's also showing off like how active she can be, even wearing glasses. She doesn't let that hold her back.
It's funny, like I grew up knowing all of the Muppeteers and who they perform. And it's like, oh, the young guy, we hired him in 1978. Yes, it's like now he's like 73 years old.
Steve Whitmire's still with it, and he was like the young guy of the 80s. Well, actually, he's not still with it. He got fired in bad fashion.
Look into that. There's some controversy there. But yeah, so the total run of this show was September 15th, 1984 to November 2nd, 1991. So 8 seasons, 107 episodes. Not that many episodes. They were mainly like 13 or 18 episode orders per year. And it ended in 91 because 91 was the end of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. I think it's for CBS especially.
Yeah, everyone but Fox was just like, I don't care anymore. We're not doing this.
CBS gave up NBC gave up first and just turned it into the like Saved by the Bell and the other shows like Saved by the Bell.
California Dreams.
CBS then gave up, and then it was like ABC's One Saturday Morning versus Fox, and then Kids WB showed up. But yeah, this was the king of the CBS block for sure.
Yeah, I should clarify. In the big three networks, Saturday mornings were basically over, but ABC hung on. Fox Kids was a contender, and then Kids WB emerged soon after that for all the like edgier, more adult programming.
Yeah, and I think UPN tried with their own action block, but that didn't
I forgot
work.
about that.
Those small episode orders. I think that was just a hallmark of Marvel, like Disney, Deke, all those ones. They would pick their one series to release in a year, and they would spend all the money on like, we need 65 episodes of Ghostbusters before these go out. We need 65 episodes of Inspector Gadget, and they'll make more if they need to. But Marvel Productions, they never did that big an episode order. They would just do like, okay, 12 of this and 12 of that and 10 of this, and we'll see what hits.
That probably made it even more profitable with such a low episode count. So the series entered syndication in 1989, and we were going over the history of Fox Kids with Our Plucky Duck Show podcast a few months ago. And it's like even Fox Kids was showing Muppet Babies reruns early on when they couldn't afford all of their own original programming.
I forgot they also had Muppet Babies. Yeah. Maybe that brought me to Fox Kids early, because I feel I have a very strong memory of watching Muppet Babies on CBS and then knowing Muppet Babies was going to then start playing on Fox Kids, so I'd have to change the channel.
Like I said, it seemed like there were endless Muppet Babies. And syndication after 1989, it had a very successful run on Nickelodeon from 92 to 99.
That is crazy. Yeah, by that point, I would maybe check in on the Nickelodeon airings of it, but pretty much skip it, because I also had memorized every episode by that point. Now they're all faded memories, except for like 3 or 4 episodes.
I remember just like endless summers of like the Stickly program, and he would show you Muppet Babies and everything you wanted as you just ate, lay around and eat food and bake in the summer sun. It was a great time to be alive in the mid 90s.
I have food connections to Muppet Babies because I just remember like this is Henry being spoiled by his mommy story again, but it was every Saturday. My mom would go out and get us like a McDonald's breakfast. And so I'd have Burger King. It was usually a croissant sandwich. So I have just these memories of eating a big greasy croissant sandwich while watching the Muppet Babies and trying to space out like, I have to finish this croissant sandwich while watching the Muppet Babies.
We got that once and I still remember it. And it was during the Plucky Duck show.
It was those croissant sandwiches were magical at the time. Yeah,
really were. So yeah, there weren't a lot of changes to the structure of the show over the 8 seasons, although some voice actors left. We'll talk about that soon. The only changes were the addition of Bean Bunny, who was a fairly new character in the 80s. And then Statler and Waldorf would show up a few times. And it was weird to have, like, the rule, like, we never show humans. There were, like, non-nanny humans in the show at some point.
Yeah.
And you only see their legs. But Statler and Waldorf are there as full human characters with faces and arms and legs and torsos.
I rewatched one of my other favorites before this that, if it wasn't up to Alex Irish, I might even insisted on this one over cartoon show, but it was Comic Capers, the one where Spider-Man is in it, which was my favorite as a kid.
Wait, is Stan Lee in that one too?
That's the one with Stan Lee.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought so.
And just rewatching that one, in that one, they are trying to stop robbers, and the classic style criminals are in the background, and they're drawn as people, cartoonish people, but so occasionally they break that rule, but never in the nursery in the real world. It was really weird seeing Statler and Waldorf in those clips.
Yeah.
As a kid, I did dislike seeing Bean Bunny in there. I was like, what are you adding another character?
Don't you like he was the Poochie of the Muppets, wasn't he?
He really was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, Bunsen and Beaker are in the original opening, and they get shoved away so fast.
That's true. Yeah, I like in the opening that most of us saw, because this is a syndicated Nickelodeon opening, they like cut an entire part of the song that introduces all the characters, and it's like, oh yeah, Bunsen and Beaker are in this.
Yeah, they're supposed to be on the same level as Rolf, but this is just a season 2 episode, and they're simply not there.
I think it's because, like, in the Muppet Show, all of their gags involve violence, and it's like, what do you do with those characters?
Yeah, that's true. This show already has moments in it that I'm like, in this episode, I'm like, this seems almost too violent for the level you're playing these kids, to what type of kids you're talking to here.
A lot of nose violence in the show.
Oh yes, yeah.
Let's talk about the few people that are credited with making this show. Developed by Jeffrey Scott. Now that's a name I haven't heard in years, but it's a name that is all over so many cartoons. So Jeffrey Scott, I will say, he is a real workhorse. And he wrote every episode in the first 3 seasons.
A lot.
And
yeah.
It was the 80s. I'll tell you what he was doing. A lot of coffee, drinking it constantly.
Okay. Yeah. The C word, coffee.
Of course. It was stronger back then. And it wasn't that rare to have just one guy crank out 13 scripts. And I will say, watching this episode, the way it is paced, I don't think a modern child could watch this because it is very, very slow. It does feel like an 11-minute script sort of stretched out to 22, because it's like a scene will happen and then a character will walk past that scene and we follow them as they walk to the next scene. There are so many, I would say maybe like 90 seconds of every episode is just like traffic, just like walking to the next scene. Like, why are we watching them just follow Nanny? Do we need to know the layout of the house?
And so many long like setups of take 3 steps. What are you doing? I'm doing this. Wow.
There is so much air in these scripts. I'm just like, come on, looking at my watch.
We're used to Ren and Stimpy. I think when you see this and then see like how fast a Ren and Stimpy episode goes, like you can see what an impact Ren and Stimpy had in that era.
But I feel like these were probably easier scripts to write, just because it was, like I said, a lot of free association. Just write a bunch of jokes and scenes around a theme. They don't have to connect in any way. They don't have to like have an arc or like a dramatic story or anything. It just has to be like a thematic collection of ideas. So Jeffrey Scott, his first cartoon role was in 1976 as the co-writer for one episode of Hanna-Barbera's Clue Club.
Clue Club? I had never heard of that.
The Clue Club Clan. A Scooby-Doo ripoff that absolutely no one remembers. It's one of the many Scooby-Doo ripoffs, but I've heard no one mention this one season thing called Clue Club. And yes, there is a dog.
Okay, I was curious what the hook is, at least with like, I don't know, give me a talking speed buggy, or a genie.
Make something else talk is what I'm saying. A shark, mayhaps.
If you're going back to dog, you've produced too many Scooby-Doo ripoffs that they just go like, what about another dog?
What if this dog is stupider? I don't know. So let's talk about what Jeffrey Scott wrote for. I can't go over it all. Go to his IMDb. It's frankly too much. So he would go on after this to write for Dynomutt, Dog Wonder, several iterations of the Super Friends, then Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Captain Caveman, Pac-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, etc. I skipped a lot leading up to Muppet Babies, but he was like the cartoon TV guy. You could just give him a season of a cartoon and he could write it.
Marvel Productions pilfered a lot of Hanna-Barbera people in their early days, and it sounds like he just like, you give him 2 months, he'll crank out a season, and then he'll move on to the next cartoon and work for 2 months on those scripts.
And so he developed Muppet Babies, wrote 40 episodes of Muppet Babies, and also developed Little Muppet Monsters, which we'll cover before this history segment ends, but that's an important part of this history.
Very, very important, yes.
So you think after developing Muppet Babies, writing 40 episodes, he could just be like, I'm the consultant guy, I am just the guy who like greenlights stuff, I've got a production company. No. he just kept writing shit. So
Man.
he would also develop, after Muppet Babies, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what that's a true classic.
Jeffrey Scott also wrote the entire first season of Captain N the Game Master, which is going to be a future What a Cartoon, mark my words.
I can't believe it's taken this long for either of those.
We need to do all the bad NES cartoons. So he wrote 4 episodes of DuckTales. He wrote 2 Tailspins. He wrote the entire only season of Wish Kid, the Macaulay Culkin cartoon about being a wish kid.
Right, yeah.
Not a Make-A-Wish kid, but a wish kid.
Not to be confused with the Page Master.
Yeah.
But a different animated Culkin. The Culkin business was booming for a few years there, and you get Culkin for an afternoon, he'll say all his lines, and then you go to the print, go to print the money.
It was all a race against puberty.
Yes.
Because the older they get, the cuter they ain't. Also, he wrote so much more. Lots of James Bond Jr., lots of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, God.
Some Ninja Turtles are in there. He wrote almost all of the entire late 90s Zorro series. And a ton of Dragon Tales. And I won't even go into the aughts and the teens because I don't recognize anything there.
How is he? Wow. Still at it?
I don't know. This guy's almost 70. He wrote 40 episodes of something called Monta in the Odd Galaxy last year.
Wow. Okay.
In his late 60s. This guy cannot stop.
So we need to find this. Our next trip to Burbank, let's just knock on doors until we find him.
One of the funniest things I found on the early internet when I was first going online was animation news groups. Someone found Jeffrey Scott and was interviewing him about Captain N, and halfway through the interview he was just like, listen, I don't know any of this stuff. Then there were a bunch of magic xylophone questions, why did he use the zapper this way if in the game it works like this? He's like, listen, they just sent me a bunch of materials and I wrote a show based on that. I can't help you.
Well, and in all those cases, writing a script is a suggestion to the animators. They have to do their own thing and get it out fast. The text may be the same, but a way a laser gun is held is not up to Jeffrey Scott.
Listen, I loved Captain N as a kid, but all of the inaccuracies pissed me off too.
Very much so.
It was a mix of joy and anger.
They all made me mad. Every choice in it. He had some juice when Muppet Babies was so big. I feel like he could have started his own production company himself. I'm the real secret behind Muppet Babies.
Why is he not? Why is that? I don't understand why he wrote 400 episodes after this. I mean, I'm sure it's fine work, but he didn't need to be doing this. He just might like writing that much.
I think maybe he doesn't have a head for business. He didn't want to be the next, Joe Barbera or whatever.
So the songs, but not the theme song. All the songs in this series. There's almost 100. There's basically one for every episode.
Yeah. Which I got to give that to the animators. That makes writing scripts a lot easier, having a song every episode.
Yeah, it's it's 3 minutes I don't have to write.
But also, the animators had to do a song once per episode, not just the every now and then a musical sequence. They had to be ready to do a song every episode,
and it works because this was the era where it's music videos, these are pretty neat. So Alan O'Day and Janice Liebhart wrote all the songs in Muppet Babies. Alan O'Day, let's talk about him. Pertaining to us, he was friends with Arch Hall Jr. in high school. And he worked on many of his movies, including Ega as the music editor.
Sorry about my face.
Yes, it's funny that Joel Hodgson made amends with Arch Hall later in life.
Sweet.
His face is still monstrous, but
he got to pie face Joel back as punishment for it.
Joel kind of deserved it. So he wrote a bunch of 70s cornball shit I don't know. I looked up all of these songs and I don't know them, but it's all easy listening, ballady stuff. So
I guess that fits with the EGA music that the songs that Arch Hall Jr. sings in it are not too far removed from a Muppet Babies song.
The many songs about Roxy. So he wrote things like The Drum for Bobby Sherman.
Bobby Sherman!
Exactly. Train of Thought by Cher. Rock and Roll Heaven by the Righteous Brothers. And Angie Baby by Helen Reddy. Again, I looked all these up. I'm I've never heard these in my life.
These were not on the oldies stations. They didn't achieve oldies stations level of notoriety in my youth.
And he had his own solo career, unfortunately, passed away in 2013.
Aww.
Janice Liebhart is an SF, San Francisco singer-songwriter, still alive. And basically, what I found most about her was from her own IMDb profile, which reads like she wrote it, which is fine because
you should write if nobody else is going to write it, write your own biography.
So here's what it says. This is all you need to know about Janice Liebhardt. She has toured with Michael Bolton for 19 years, Moody Blues, Righteous Brothers, Charlie Rich, Engelbert Humperdinck, and a menagerie of other shorter tours and TV appearances. Her vocals appear on Ringo Starr's CD Why Not? And Neil Young's Living with War. She is a 6-time Emmy certificate winner for writing special material for both Jim Henson's Muppet Babies and Sesame Street, and helped pioneer National Geographic TV's award-winning show with songs for really wild animals. And I believe the other songwriter also worked on that after Muppet Babies.
Okay, they stayed in the Henson world then. That's funny that you could see a Michael Bolton live show and one of his like backup singers is a co-songwriter of every Muppet Baby song. I'm wondering now if like another reason this isn't on Disney Plus is how do they pay the songwriter fees? Like
that's true.
These aren't ASCAP. Like you don't get direct songwriting things, but this feels like could be tough to sort out for streaming rights.
And other credits that Janice has is the theme from Undercover Brother.
Oh.
And the theme for The Emperor's New School, or Emperor's New School.
Oh, okay, yeah. Which that really is just like that just adapts a song from the Emperor's New Groove movie.
Somebody had to write it, though.
Yeah.
And it was her. Let's talk about voices, the most annoying collection of voices. So Frank Welker as Kermit. And we've heard a lot of these already in our Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue episode we did back in April on 420. But so Frank Welker, you don't need to know who he is. But in case you don't, like the most storied voice actor of all time, God bless him, still acting. Legendary when it comes to animal noises. And for some reason, it feels like this is a very atypical voice for him to do. This is not really a voice that I associate with Frank Welker, but he does a good version of Kermit.
Well, and all the Muppet original actors who, are very, and I think rightfully so, possessive of their roles. In this case, they were just like, hands off, we're not doing it. Like that takes away more of the legitimacy from it because it's none of the Muppet actors, but there's no way Marvel Productions would pay them what they'd get paid for a normal thing.
They could not afford to get Jim Henson in a booth singing for 100 episodes.
There's a reason Frank Welker does every voice in things because he's more affordable than Frank Oz.
So Greg Berg as Fozzie and Scooter, and not Greg Berger, idiot.
Yes,
he's not corn-fed. Greg Berg is different than Greg Berger.
Very different.
Greg Berg actually doesn't do a lot of notable stuff. He's mostly like additional voices in different media. And I think what he really does, based on some information I found about him, he is mainly like a guy who does ADR for famous people who don't want to do it. So he's done ADR for like Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel. Like he is a good voice imitator for certain voices.
Okay, so if there's a moment in a Robert De Niro film where I'm like, boy, he sounds weird for this one line off screen, it could be Greg Berg.
Could be Little Fozzie himself. And also Fozzie sucks. They should all
he's
hate
the worst.
him.
I hate him.
He wastes everybody's time. Oh, sorry. So Katie Leigh as Ralph, who, by the way, that's Jim Henson's favorite Muppet, believe it or not. A veteran voice actor with countless roles dating back to 1978. Some standouts. She was Dumbo in the nightmarish Dumbo Circus.
Oh, God.
Check out Defunctland's video on that.
Disturbing. My mom hated every time I wanted to watch it, and I understand now. It was horrifying.
That Winnie the Pooh thing might have been worse.
I think so, yeah.
She was also Sunny Gummy in The Gummy Bears, also on Disney Plus, and a Honker in Darkwing Duck, all very similar voices.
Oh, yeah, Honker and Rolf are not too distant from each other, yeah.
And still voice acting in 2020.
Good on her.
Laurie O'Brien as Piggy, 98% of her roles are just like, I was on Diagnosis Murder, and I was on this, and I was on that. She's a character actor, mainly in TV shows and movies. It feels like this voice was a party trick that got her a role in the Muppet Babies.
I see, yeah. I wonder how much in all these voices, how much they're changed, pitched up and everything, but her ability to do a young Miss Piggy is very impressive.
This voice is insane.
Yeah.
This voice is absolutely insane. How did any parent put up with this?
It's an accomplishment, but it also drives you crazy.
Yeah.
The poor parents who had to have like a talking Miss Piggy doll in their house.
Recall those. Russi Taylor, R.I.P. to the great Russi Taylor as Gonzo. Great performance as Gonzo.
She's the best. She's every Gonzo line in this, I'm like, this is the best acting in the show.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't need to talk about Russi because we do Talking Simpsons, of course, and we did a lot about Russi when she passed away. Was it last year or was it this year?
It was just last year.
Okay, this year's taken it so long. But she was Martin Prince in The Simpsons and Sherry and Terry and Ooter and the Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So many cartoon voices. Such a distinct voice. Like all of these voices she does are so distinct and only she could really do them.
I think she got cast as Gonzo right before Minnie Mouse. I think she was like Minnie Mouse starting in like 85 or something and Gonzo was 84. So I mean, she had gotten Disney level. I'm shocked she stuck around to be Gonzo, but maybe she just loved doing it, you know?
So I really think that in the credits of these episodes I was watching on YouTube, I think there was just like one all-purpose credits reel for like,
absolutely.
Well, here are all the directors that directed some stuff, and here are all the writers that wrote some stuff.
But this was all the borders for this year, whatever.
But they don't even retain like who the old voice actors were. So on this episode, Dave Coulier is listed as the voice actor for some of these characters. Absolutely not. It's Howie Mandel.
Yeah. It's funny to me that Dave Coulier was brought in as like the more affordable Howie Mandel. That's a lot of his career, I would bet.
Howie Mandel played Animal. He does in this episode, and Skeeter doing the Bobby voice. Howie Mandel at the time was a somewhat notable stand-up, but he really exploded in the mid-'80s, and that's when he left the show because he was too big to be doing Muppet Baby shit.
Yeah, just like how Arsenio Hall, I talked about on the Ghostbusters thing. He got too big to do that. There's a really great, look it up on YouTube. Arsenio Hall has Dave Coulier on, and they actually talk about recording Ghostbusters together and how low rent it felt to be an animation voice actor before they hit it big.
Poor guy. Great role on that show, though. So yeah, Dave Coulier would take over for Howie Mandel, but Howie Mandel did play Animal and Skeeter, and then Coulier would take over for Animal, but not for Skeeter. Frank Welker would take over for Skeeter. He's about, like, the Bobby voice only Howie Mandel can do, but I watched a later episode with Welker doing it, and he gets to about, like, 85% of the way there.
Close enough, and like, Welker can get close enough on most things and save you the money on hiring another actor.
And we also have Barbara Billingsley as Nanny. So it's a clever bit of casting because she is June Cleaver on Leave It to Beaver, like the ultimate comforting 50s mother. And if you're showing your kids this in 1984, yes, you grew up with Leave It to Beaver. So it's a little cute, isn't it? It's so cute.
Yeah. I mean, even for the young guys writing this, that was comforting to them to hear their lines coming out of such a famous actress of playing the perfect mom of the 50s.
And it is like a comforting voice, and like the nanny theme they play under it puts me to sleep.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's just like the nanny, the immortal nanny theme from Muppet Babies.
Though she's actually a pretty inattentive nanny.
Yeah,
like those kids are getting hurt.
Again, all the jokes have been made, but Animal should be supervised. Animal has special needs, and these kids can't watch him. He's going to choke on something.
He's a baby among toddlers.
Yeah, a baby among toddlers. That's my autobiography. It's what it's called. So Little Muppet Monsters, Muppet Babies is so huge in its first season. They're like, we need a sister show to expand this to an hour-long block. And that is where Little Muppet Monsters came about, because it involved even less animation, because it was a mix of Muppet stuff, including things with like Fozzie and Kermit played by Frank Oz and Jim Henson, but also, little animated segments where those characters would not be voiced by their puppeteers. And so they commissioned 18 episodes. 3 were actually finished, and Jim Henson personally shut down the production because he felt like it wasn't working. I think one of the things he cited was there was a big disconnect when you would see Kermit on the show and then you would cut to a cartoon with Frank Welker doing the Kermit voice. But also he said that like having those Muppets next to limited animation made the animation look worse.
And again, we've said like Toei does good animation comparatively for 80s TV cartoons. But yeah, when you see Kermit on screen as a felt puppet looks higher prestige than crappy cartoons of it. I also like re-watching. I never caught one episode of Little Muppet Monster. I think it was 4 when it when it premiered. But when I see him now, it was that thing I had as a kid too, of when I'd get a toy of non-baby Muppets, and it would be like the legs of Kermit, I'd just be like, this feels weird. I don't like seeing it.
I buy like the Muppet Babies walking around and stuff, but seeing the clips of these cartoons with like Kermit and Fozzie just like walking around down the street and stuff, it's just like, I don't like it.
Yeah,
it's like when you see Alf's legs.
You're right. Yeah, it's disturbing all the same. Like, at least Alf was animated by TMS though, and at a certain higher level.
That's true. The Alpha May. Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, Little Muppet Monsters was retained in Muppet Babies for the rest of its run, because here's the closing theme of Muppet Babies. This is not like a breakthrough fact. Everyone kind of knows this, but in case you don't, here's the closing theme of Muppet Babies.
We all know.
Yeah. Yeah, you get it. So that's actually the theme to Little Muppet Monsters. That's the instrumental, and they just kept that as the Muppet Babies closing theme. I don't know why, but here is the Little Muppet Monsters opening theme.
They're down in the basement, everybody knows. Little Muppet Monsters. They're just a crazy kids crew and they're putting on show. Little Muppet Monsters. That's all right. Kermit and the Penguin Man, pictures face to.
You get it. But yeah, they just retain that as the theme song. And here's the actual theme song, the ending theme to Muppet Babies that I have never heard until research. So this is a real, like, almost Mandela effect. Like, an alternate timeline, this was a theme, but it actually was for just one season. So here's a theme that you never heard unless you're like 45.
Wow. Yeah, I never heard this.
It's so weird. So there you go.
Well, I think what must have happened is that they aired together in 85 for like 3 weeks, and they changed the ending theme for the credits to be both of those. And then after those 3 episodes, like, let's just keep the ending theme the same. It sounds fine, and it's accurate. All the screenshots over that credit music too, is just like, again, burned in my brain.
Every one of them.
Every single one.
So let's talk really quick before we move on to the actual discussion of the episode, to the 2018 Disney Junior reboot. I think Disney realized, like, nobody cares about the Muppets. People care. They can make a Muppet show and people can care. But they were like, we held off on the baby stuff, but we know adults don't really want this, so let's just make the Muppet Babies again. And they did. And I watched an episode. It's not for a 38-year-old podcaster.
No.
But it's a quality show for kids, and it moves much faster than this. And so they boiled down the core cast of characters to just like 4 in a new character. So it's Fozzie, Gonzo, Piggy, Kermit, and then Summer the Penguin.
Yeah, that's the new, to beef up the girl, to play the second girl of the Muppets. They made up that character instead.
No Animal, no Skeeter, no Scooter, no Bunsen, no Honeydew.
Oh, I do think Animal got added in later ones.
Okay, I must have only watched an early one then.
I did, because I watched the opening today, and I did see current opening, I guess, and it has Animal in it. But I think, too, you slim down the cast when it's a CGI show, and that's fewer character models to make.
But I did think it was kind of fun, and Kermit can do like the Kermit face, like the scrunched up Kermit face finally.
Like that.
So they retain some of the things that you would see like in memes and stuff.
That's good. I'm sure it seems fine enough for kids, and I hope it teaches them good lessons, better ones than we got from these, and also it lets Disney sell Muppet Baby merchandise to a whole new era of babies.
You just try searching for Muppet Babies 1984. All you're going to find is merch and like DVDs and the streams and stuff for this one.
Yeah, it's when I see the YouTube thumbnails for this, when I'm searching for 84 Muppets, the screenshots are even made to be, the thumbnails that you make for little kid cartoons on there. The same with like the baby shark coloring and sizes of characters.
It's like when you hand your child an iPad, they'll be more likely to touch this and not another Finger Family video.
That's Finger Families that then link them to some reactionaries blog.
There's been no real release of the series. I mean, if you can count like a couple of VHS tapes in the 80s, but this is never going to be going anywhere. Nobody wants to retain this, despite how popular it was, and the rights issues are a nightmare. Disney might be able to sort it out, but why bother doing that when you can just make a newer show that will actually appeal to kids?
That's also
your modern kids.
Well, and as we saw with how long it took for The Simpsons to appear in that correct aspect ratio, do they want to go to all that trouble of, widescreenifying this thing, and I definitely don't think they'd bother with that since they got a new thing. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that appears in here because of a handshake agreement, and these could all air on Nickelodeon because they were eyeing syndication, so I'm sure they've filled out the correct permissions to use it in syndication. But when it comes to streaming rights or putting it on DVD, far too many deals to make, even though Disney now owns like half of the clips they use in this, I think. But they still don't own all of them, and they can't use them.
Yeah, thankfully this has shown enough that enough people have recorded it all. None of it is lost, and it's easy to find, and in pretty good quality.
Yeah, and I do think this was a good pick by Alex Irish, this particular episode, because I did see that this was one of like 4 episodes that were released on VHSs that were sold at McDonald's.
I saw that too. What a scam.
So that must be why this one is the YouTube clip we both watched looks even better than the usual ones that have like the Toon Disney or Nickelodeon, bug in the corner.
So that was our history on Muppet Babies. When we come back, we'll talk about the episode The Great Muppet Cartoon Show.
When your room looks kind of weird and you wish that you weren't there.
Just close your eyes and make believe, and you can be anywhere.
I like adventure.
I like romance.
I love great jokes.
I'm a mobile.
I've got my computer.
I'll play the piano.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the break for the What a Cartoon episode about Muppet Babies. I am your host, Bob Mackey, closing my eyes and make-believing. We're in a world without masks. So beautiful. Who is here with me today?
I love adventure and romance. It's Henry Gilbert.
That's right, and if you want to support our shows and get all these episodes 1 week at a time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and if you sign up at the $5 level, you'll get just that, but also access to all of our exclusive miniseries, the most recent of which is Talking Mission Hill. We're going through the entire only season of Mission Hill, all 13 episodes plus a bonus episodes about the episodes you didn't see because they were never made, and that is only on the Patreon, along with all of our other miniseries and so many other bonus podcasts we've done over the past 3 and counting years now. Once you sign up, you'll immediately get access to everything we've made for the past 3 years. That is a lot of podcasts. And Henry can tell everybody out there what's happening at the $10 level. 1 extra long podcast once a month that is only for patrons of that level or higher.
That's right. For premium subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you get the monthly What a Cartoon movie podcast. Me and Bob talk about an animated feature film for over 4 hours most of the time. We have a giant back catalog of them, but if you sign up this month, you'll get to hear our newest one in full, Space Jam. And boy, do we slam and jam all over that movie. And the history is even joined by our friend Thad Komorowski, who really helps us with some Looney Tunes historical perspective. And you'll get the entire back catalog in addition to that. Over 70 hours of movie podcasts just for $10 a month. On top of all that $5 stuff Bob just talked about at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it is so easy to do. And once you do it, you're given a code that you have access to at all times. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and then you can download our bonus podcast alongside your regular free podcast. It's all part of your grand podcasting lifestyle that we all appreciate. And there is also an app out there for smartphones if you'd rather listen to our bonus content that way. But either way, it is so easy to access all the bonus content available at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So thanks so much for listening to this break. We'll let you get into our full discussion of our Muppet Babies episode, The Great Muppet Cartoon Show.
McDonald's presents.
Presents? Did someone say presents? A present for moi?
I once got a present. Wow, special delivery.
I'll look for the present somewhere else.
When you buy your kids McDonald's Happy Meal featuring Muppet Babies, they get a Muppet Babies figure with a push toy different Muppet Babies can share, plus neat cutouts on the box.
Kermit, surf's up.
McDonald's Happy Meal featuring Muppet Babies. Collect all 4.
Including moi.
Happen in the dark when you notice the day like our day in the dark. That's no reason to ever be afraid. Why don't you?
So we're back to talk about the Great Muppet Cartoon Show. So talk about who made this episode. Jeffrey Scott, of course, wrote everything in the first 3 seasons. We talked about him. There's no credited director on this episode, but Karen Peterson is the supervising director of the show. We talked about her before on other things like Bonkers and Bucky O'Hare. And did I say Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue yet?
Oh, no, you now.
Okay, yeah.
Two there.
She was also supervising director on that. So this is all repeated info, but just if you want a reminder. She started in animation in the mid-70s at Filmation, working on things like Fat Albert and the Cosby Gang, and Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. Tons of animation credits up to 2014, and her directing credits include Transformers, G.I. Joe, Gem, Inhumanoids, My Little Pony, Garfield and Friends. Lots of work at Disney TV Animation. Supervising director of 41 episodes of Bonkers, and animation director on 18 episodes of Gargoyles.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is very impressive career there, and definitely a steady hand on these productions to keep getting hired as supervising director on all that stuff. Too bad she never got the prestige of theatrical, but those just seem to be two different, rivers there that don't intersect.
And we have to talk about the iconic opening of Muppet Babies. Again, baked into my head. Every shot, every bit of public domain footage, every bit of expensive movie footage. I don't think there's any public domain stuff in the opening.
No, not in the opening. Yeah, they front load it with, the promise of getting to see a clip of Star Wars right up front. Like, you probably didn't own a Star Wars VHS, so this was your chance to watch Star Wars in the Saturday morning. Like, it was really special. Or the Indiana Jones Boulder scene too, like it grabs you right there.
You didn't know you're going to be watching Coco the Clown.
Yes, yeah, it was all a lie.
And like the version that just lost the time includes this like little section where all the characters introduce themselves, and I think it's a real litmus test for like, these are the voices you're going to hear. They're all going to be singing too, so parents, get ready for this. So here's the little segment that most people haven't heard anymore. It was not retained in syndication or on the very popular Nickelodeon run. It's like every character saying like, here's my trait.
Mm-hmm.
I like adventure.
I like bananas.
I love great jokes.
I'm a mobile.
I've got my computer.
I'll play the piano.
Oh, there's 2 more. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is everything all right in here?
Yes, Nanny.
Yeah, so I like Scooter's just like, I own a computer. That's my personality.
I own a computer. Well, isn't that all our personalities?
It's
now?
true.
I
own a computer.
I think the one that is stretched the most is Skeeter's like, I fly through the air.
Yeah.
Like, I'm killing my voice even trying
Can you
to do
believe
this.
he sung so much on Bobby's World in that voice? We were like screaming during that episode of Bobby's World we did for What a Cartoon like over 2 years ago.
You can't stop Howie Mandel from singing, I guess.
Yeah.
He's though the animation on I Fly Through the Air is very anime. Like they cannot get too much anime movement out of these characters, but that like flip and roll stuff, like that felt very anime to me.
The thing where every character is doing their own thing, like quick shots between them, introducing them, is very anime OP. Like, here's every character doing cool things. Animation will never be this good again.
And it also has the flavor of the TMNT theme that would come later of like, Donatello does machines, Michelangelo's a party dude, but this is even more direct of them telling you like, I like adventure. Like they let you know they like adventure.
And Gonzo has blue hair because he's not following the prompts. He's a weirdo.
That weirdo. This is a very anti-weirdo show. And I don't appreciate that.
They don't want you turning into a weirdo.
Being a weirdo is bad, and you need to get that under control. Now, look, you shouldn't be a stalker like Gonzo is, but being a weirdo.
One of my favorite lines is about him being a weirdo that I laughed at. It felt kind of dark, actually.
And that one of the most burned in my memory ones is the Wizard of Oz skip with the pages turning. It's really good.
And when they're like pulling the logo together at the end.
Yes, yeah. That in the Little Muppet Monsters theme, I forgot to mention, like in theirs, it feels more like they're talking to. There's this like caste system in Muppets where they say like, we're Muppets too. Like they're stuck in the basement, these Muppet Monsters.
Second class Muppets.
They're not as good as the other Muppets, but in this one it's more like, It's a cartoon. Is that what they're saying? It's a cartoon.
I thought it's like your dreams come true.
Oh, yeah.
It's
that
all
makes
about
more
like your
sense,
dreams
yeah.
are coming true. It's a lofty promise for the Muppets.
You're right. Yeah, your dreams come true. Yeah, though as a little kid, when I would use my imagination, I get frustrated of like, well, I can't literally make things appear. I don't get to fly through the air.
They lied about me, and I guess the last thing I'll say is like it's forever in my brain, just like carved into some things in my brain, whatever your brain's made out of, gum. I don't know, but the way he says, "When you wish that you weren't there."
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that with a one-syllable word.
And just to me, another one that stuck with me is just the bright overexposure of the words Muppets and Babies coming together. Like that was always the peak of my excitement as a little kid. Is like when those words come together, this episode of Muppet Babies will begin.
Joy will start in Reagan era America. So yeah, this episode begins in a very, I mean, these are very like the pedestrian antics of children, and just like characters wandering up to each other like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
it's like,
I'm doing that.
Exactly. A character wants to know what another character is doing, and they explain it. And Scooter is drawing a spaceman on his computer. There's some, Kermit thinks it's a guy with a fishbowl on his head, and Skeeter thinks it's a football player. But then Skeeter shows people like, oh, look, this is what a flip book is. And it's all about teaching kids like you can do cartoons on your own. And I think I got that idea from this. I mean, I was like doing that with like the corners of like a notebook. You can draw little flip books in.
I have to think Child Henry did a few flip books because he saw the Muppet Babies do it and basically tell you as the viewer, like, you can do this. Anybody can do this. It's like that. That's a really nice message in this show about especially animation that like you would think, oh, I can't do what's on TV. And yes, you can't actually do what is literally on TV by yourself. But you could just draw your own little funny cartoon moving back and forth. And
I think Nanny frankly complicates things later in this episode.
Yeah, just let him flip things. You don't need a... Yeah.
Are you going to get this film developed?
I wondered if she probably just like throws it away and just like, oh, got lost. Or like, you kids forgot it anyway.
Another day down the drain with these kids.
Like I had hoped my mom had an 8mm camera. I probably asked about that too, but we did not have that. But yeah, I think Scooter. Also, Nanny should not be trusting a little kid with this kind of computer. I
guess there's no internet yet, but that's too advanced for this toddler to be slamming his fist down on.
But Scooter's bit here does portend the end of ink and paint. It's
true.
Like within 15 years of this, everybody would be drawing their spacemen on computers.
I like Scooter in the Muppet Show, but here he's such a dick. He's just like, don't take my paper. What are you doing?
Yeah, he's in the Muppet Show. He's just like, I'm so happy you're here, Elton John. I love you. Like that's what he's about. Here he's just a very fussy kid, which, I mean, I was Scooter.
Oh, yeah. I hate him because I relate too much to him.
Yeah. If I was any child, I was Scooter when watching this. But I probably told myself, like, oh, my God, so I misunderstood.
Wow! Did you see that? Scooter's football player moves when you flip the pages.
He does? Let me see.
Fozzie, don't!
I didn't see him move.
That's because you didn't do it right, silly Fozzie. Can't see!
Hey, that's just like one of those little cartoon flip books.
Well, of course it is. I drew it that way on purpose.
In that case, you can teach us all how to make flip books. Here, guys!
Hey, that's my computer paper.
That's what you used, isn't it?
Shut up.
Well, yeah, but...
Well, also, Scooter, you didn't buy that paper. You got it from Nanny, so screw you.
Scooter's a real dick. I gotta say, like, it sounds like the music in this show is, like, diegetic. Like, someone just playing music in the background somewhere. It's like, or just a record playing. It so doesn't match anything that's happening. It just meander, like, boom, 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 boom.
I mean, I don't expect full orchestration, but this is like the cheapest of library music.
It's one of those things where you compose like 8 songs, you just drop them in where appropriate.
No, I mean from a year earlier, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was just as guilty of that. Like they would just play the same. This is just the childish version of that. And yeah, the first scene here with Fozzie, I'm just like, God, I hate you, Fozzie. You're so
He's going to show up and waste your time. You can even hear in this, this show was designed for children 35 years ago, so we can't be too harsh, but you can hear like the footsteps because characters like, they just show characters like walking to the next like shot, basically.
Yeah.
There is so much time killed just with these unnecessary shots of like walking to things.
I agree with Piggy when she tells Fozzie, like, you're doing it wrong. And just how long we have to wait. I forgot how poorly paced it was, even that whole bit of like Animal going, can't see. And then it takes him forever to stop on Kermit's head. Like, do those actions together. Like, you can speed this up. The timing is just so slow.
It's important to point out, though, that this is also 20 times better than anything on at the same time, the same
That's
slot.
what's sad.
Yeah.
That's what's really... We did Thundar the Barbarian, and that was also...
So much shouting.
Yeah, but that was still way better than most of the other crap on, too. I loved watching this compared to Smurfs. I was a Smurfs hater as a kid. The Smurfs weren't going to reference a movie or do a full parody of one.
They thought you were stupid.
Yeah.
So Piggy shows Fozzie how to make a flip book, which is very instructional for the kids. You just need to make a bunch of pictures, each one a little different than the last. And she shows that she's drawing Kermit. So her thing's going to be a Kermit-based piece of animation.
It shows kids that all kids, you probably have paper lying around. Just draw a thing and then draw a thing that's slightly different. Yeah.
And we see all the babies have different things. Skeeter does like a little stick figure doing a cartwheel. Gonzo takes advantage of his vast collection of stock footage, and his is just like old footage of dancing girls, and also I think a Charlie Chaplin movie with a lion or something.
Or a Chaplin ripoff movie.
Actually, it looks like a Chaplin ripoff, like some sort of dollar store knockoff Chaplin
with lions running around him. Unlucky kids today, they don't have to watch grainy old footage of ancient silent films. I think honestly, like Muppet Babies was one of the few keeping that tradition alive in our childhoods. Like Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, they talk about how they kept wanting to reference specific black and white archival footage they saw as kids, and then they're like, oh, kids watching The Simpsons don't know that video of the guy getting hit in the stomach with a cannonball.
I was thinking about that. Zoomers have not seen the cannonball guy, the rickety bridge.
Yeah, the all the planes falling apart.
Yeah. Oh, I love all those planes. But yeah, various examples of flip books. Of course, Animal eats his paper. Again, Animal needs to be supervised. These are all choking hazards, and it's not good.
I'm glad he's not the horny animal that we know from the live
That's
action.
True.
Yeah,
they tell he's not reached that part of his life now.
As a kid, I think I hated Animal because he reminded me of my little brother who, like, when I was watching Muppet Babies, I was 5 and he was 2, and I just saw him as Animal, just like, yeah, you just make a mess and you're unintelligible, like you're a useless baby.
You wanted to make him go bye-bye, didn't you, Henry?
I did, but Mom wouldn't let me.
So Fozzie has the saddest flip book. I laugh at this, which is not a joke. It's just like, I drew an audience that would laugh at me. Just like, wow, Fozzie, that's dark. It's like drawing a friend.
And even when he tells a joke, his friends are like, we're still not laughing. Like, no way.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, we get it. Fans make you cool off.
Yeah, why do movie stars have a lot of fans? Because they're hot is the joke.
Which I guess I definitely think Fozzie means hot in meaning popular, not hot meaning attractive.
It's weird, like while he's telling this joke, there's like footage of another old cartoon of a man like tearing a newspaper apart and plugging his ears with it.
Yeah.
Like it had to be like pre-sound cartoon.
That definitely looks like a pre-sound one, which also makes it annoying that they have all these like silent era cartoons that were probably public domain even in 85. But they add sounds to them. So in a way, they ruined them by adding sounds. This feels like more Winsor McKay to me. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Winsor McKay is definitely in this big time. Like his big stars in this cartoon.
We should just call up our friend Thad right now and be like, hey, watch this scene and tell us what it is.
What are these stupid mice from? Yeah. But yeah, let's hear Nanny and the soothing Nanny theme.
Hi, kids. What are you up to?
We're making flip books, Nanny. Want to see mine?
I'd love to, Rolf.
You flip through it while I play the piano.
Why, that was wonderful.
I made this one, Nanny.
That was darling, Piggy.
Thank you.
May I see yours, Kermit?
Well, it's not very good, Nanny.
That was very clever, Kermit. You know you can make real animated cartoons if you want to.
We can?
Uh-huh. I'll show you.
I gotta walk to the next scene.
Long walk. Holy crap.
Good on 3 hallways.
I always knew Nanny kept a cartoon machine in this closet.
Actually, it's just an old 8mm movie camera, Gonzo. All you have to do to create your own cartoons is make lots of drawings, just like you did for your flip books.
You just need to send an animatic to Korea. I'll call my buddy at ACOM.
She is really trusting these babies with that. I mean, it's probably just sat in her closet forever. It's going to break. Like, she doesn't care.
But, like, adding a camera rig and, like, developing film and, like, possibly editing, too much for these 3-year-olds.
I guess, you know, the creators of this are remembering when they were like 16 and 8mm like handheld cameras were easier to get, you know, and more regularly available. Like, you could make a stop motion animation at home that would probably look like crap, but
I think that they are they really want to let kids know, like, okay, so you draw things and they're photographed, but they don't have the confidence to take it further than that, to show more steps of the process, so it just sort of ends there with the instructional bit, or like the informational bit of how cartoons are made.
I guess, yeah, if they're just going to stick with flip books, you have an even lighter, thinner story than you already have here.
So Nanny explains how this works. It's like you just click the shutter button whenever you see a new drawing, and then they will all line up into like a piece of animation.
Yeah, and she says like, I'll have to set it up for you too, because what she didn't say, like, also it needs to be steady. If it can't move, because then the photographs won't work either. She should have told them like, well, let's get a flashlight. Obviously this needs to be lit correctly, but Rolf's drawing ability is the best in this episode.
Yeah, although his cartoon is very literal and kind of boring. It's just like sheet music moving across the page while he plays.
Yeah, you know, Skeeter's drawing, it wasn't like the most creative character, but the action of the cartwheel, like, that is much more fun than just like, I don't know, Kermit waving or whatever. I also like Piggy's drawing of Kermit turning into a heart. Kermit has a very anime blush on his face, which he shouldn't be able to blush at all as a green, slimy amphibian.
I bet they wanted to draw in a big sweat drop for him.
Yeah. And who are the parents of these Muppets? Am I right?
I honestly, I think as a kid, I was waiting for them to be picked up at some point, or like just to even go outside.
They were never mentioned like, I have a parent or mom picked me up here. Like, but the implication of a character of the nanny seems to mean that she's just watching them for the day, and the kids will come to pick them up, or the parents will be pick them up later.
They do leave this playroom in this episode, and I remember as a kid it was a big deal. Like, oh my god, I've never seen where Nanny sleeps, or like when you explore more of this house, I guess they live in.
Yeah, I remember now vaguely there was an episode where one of the babies gets to hang out with Nanny the whole time, but they think that the baby has like been kidnapped, or they have to save him from jail. I think it's Animal gets put in timeout or something.
I remember one, the only episode I remember of the series, despite how much I watched it, was like Fozzie loses his skate key.
Yes, yeah.
And they have to go through more rooms of the house to find it. And I was like, wow, I'm exploring more of the Muppet Babies house.
I think they go to the center of the earth in that one, don't they?
Yeah.
And they say that how earthquakes are the earth belching. Boy.
And I still don't know what a skate key is.
Yeah, no, that felt very ancient when we saw that. I also vaguely remember an episode, they did a Star Trek one already, but then they did a sequel Star Trek one that was next gen, and Rolf meets a future Rolf who looks like Worf, and they sing a song about how take care of your Earth and save the planet because your future is doomed otherwise. And when I rewatched that one, I was like, boy, we really didn't listen.
We didn't listen to Future Rolf. So yeah, there's a bunch of gags here. Fozzie drops paper, which is hilarious. Animal eats the paper, which he'll do several times.
Shouldn't let a baby eat paper. No. I really don't think. I also like when they walk away with the camera, they all say their celebratory catchphrase, especially Yippee Skippy.
Yippee Skippy is, I guess that was the catchphrase of this show. More stuff like Piggy using Gonzo's nose for an eraser, Animal smearing paint on his face and then smashing his face into the paper. And then we go to Kermit and Piggy. Kermit doesn't know what to draw, and Piggy wants some help making Pignocchio. And I got to say, for your first animation project, making a full-scale parody of Pinocchio, Disney's Pinocchio, maybe start a little smaller.
Pretty ambitious on Piggy's part, but hey, Miss Piggy is known for her grand ambitions and also her love of Kermit. And I like too that Piggy, as an artist, her first thing is fanfic about and turns it into a romance story of a person she has a crush on.
Jiminy Cricket falls in love with Pinocchio.
I think too, because I watched this first. I mean, that's also weird. Of what if Jiminy Cricket fell in love with that child instead? But let's not think about that. But I think another thing that confused me as a kid who first watched Muppet Babies and then Muppets was that Gonzo has romantic interest in Piggy in this as opposed to the live action.
That's right. That's not that confused me. And I was thinking in my head, in live action Muppets in quotes, does Gonzo love Piggy? And the answer is no.
No, he loves Camilla and other chickens.
His love of chickens is preserved on his little overalls. There's a little chick design on it.
Yeah, but Gonzo is a weirdo who... His chicken love is a joke about geeks the circus geek who eats chickens and also loves them.
Loves them
in a physical
carnally.
sense.
This is the story of Pinocchio. Honestly, this is just a lot of filler because this parody could work in any other sense, but
literally any other episode they could retell Pinocchio in this same way. It has nothing to do with a cartoon.
Yeah, it teaches you nothing about animation. It's just a Pinocchio parody. But here is Kermit's Jiminy Kermit or whatever, or Jeremy Kermit. I forget what they call him.
Kermit, not Jiminy Cricket.
That's so weird. But yeah, he's jumping into I guess Geppetto's house to check out Pinocchio.
No Geppetto in this though.
That's true. I guess we would need an adult. A huge person.
Oh, gee, there's nothing worse than frozen frog legs. See, this looks like a nice warm place to spend the night. Gosh, I've never seen a wooden pig before. Yo! May I have this dance?
This takes a while.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, Pinocchio, how I wish you were a real pig instead of a wooden puppet. Gee.
What's this? I don't remember a frog in this story. What happened to the grasshopper in the tuxedo? This is the Pinocchio story, isn't it?
Who are you?
The Blue Fairy. Who'd you think? I never could get the hang of these stupid wings.
So yeah, that's the Blue Fairy who changes his wings into a jetpack. He's trying to modernize this.
Way
story.
cooler, yeah. And also, I guess, he's not worried that he's a fairy. There's no, at least, cheap joke about boys can be fairies or whatever. Definitely the Muppets wouldn't do that.
No. He's got a date with Cinderella before midnight.
Yeah.
He's a man's man.
Yeah. Those are my favorite jokes in this episode of Gonzo. Whenever Gonzo gets to be meta and be I'm the Blue Fairy in every fairy tale.
He's this weird showbiz fairy too, or who wants to get paid. He does these little spells on the wooden Miss Piggy or Pinocchio. Give some life to this wooden maid. It's getting late and I like to get paid. So I like how it's at least slightly cynical. I mean, it's a show for babies, but they're the Muppets are the edgy cartoons. Let's make this thing a little edgy.
Yeah, Gonzo insisting Kermit sign a contract.
Yeah.
And also him in a very showbiz agenty way, hey, I can get you in the Wizard of Oz. Come with me.
And then we take this puppet of wood, string, and cork and turn it into living pork.
I like that. Turn it into
living pork. Just sounds disgusting.
It does, yeah, actually. But it's funny. Gonzo is both hitting on her and mocking her for being a pig.
And that's when Gonzo is come away with me and I'll get you a job with the Wizard of Oz. And that's when Pinocchio wraps up Gonzo's nose with all the strings she doesn't need anymore and carries out a lot of violence against him off screen.
Yeah, it's definitely in a show for 6-year-olds now, you would not have this much violence done to another child.
Repeatable. There's none of this in the 2018 series. Like, let's hit the weirdo.
Yeah.
Let's hit and abuse him.
I think it's same with how they do so many jokes about Miss Piggy's weight. Don't think they'd be doing that now. Yeah, or Gonzo just being like, having a crush on somebody, like that is you don't do that with kids' stories now.
We don't do those characters anymore. So Piggy...
also, they draw his nose so phallic in this. Maybe I'm just seeing things.
I kind of love the Gonzo design in this. I like all the designs, but the Gonzo one is just, I don't know, I just want to hug him.
I like his blue fur. He's really cute, and his eyes, but yeah, his nose is like way
extra
thicker.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I don't
with two C's.
I don't want to get too gross here, but yes, especially like his nose can pull him up out of things, and it can be wrapped around stuff. It's a very flexible nose compared to the immobile smaller nose of regular Gonzo.
Think of how like disgusting adult Gonzo looks compared to this cute creature.
Yeah. Again, Gonzo, my favorite Muppet.
Oh, Jeremy, Kermit, let's you and me run off to the swamp together and elope.
Gee, Pinocchio, it's awfully wet in the swamp. Can you swim?
No, but I can float forever. I made of wood, you know.
Gee, did you say wood or lead?
Fat.
Yes.
Kermit, are you sure you're doing it right?
Well, Nanny said all we have to do is put each picture under the camera and click it once.
Oh, Kermit, you're so smart.
It's a bit messed up that they put Gonzo in this cartoon to abuse him.
Yeah.
Just like, look what I drew. I drew me beating you up in another world.
Take that. Yeah. Well, also I guess that lets you know it's Piggy's fanfic, because Jeremy Kermit just goes along with it, like, I obviously love you and will take you away. Like, we'll elope for sure.
That feels like the safest parody legally, because it's not, they don't use Jiminy or Crickets.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
like they can't say anything about it, even though Pinocchio might be public domain by now. The story.
I think Jiminy Cricket was a Disney creation for it, though, so that's why you can't show him in it. But yeah, and you can put your pedo wherever you want. And yeah, I mean, that lead versus wood thing, and the elope to the swamp, like that's just straight Muppet Show writing there.
So we get some more gags here, just various, I guess, animation gags.
Why is Fozzie drawing chickens instead of Gonzo?
Yeah,
that's what I say.
It's this weird thing of this time period that's really just like kind of boomer humor, where it's just like, I guess when they were kids, nothing was funnier than like chickens and monkeys. Like those are the funniest things ever.
A rubber chicken, waka waka.
Which I guess was a carryover from like vaudeville.
Yeah. I mean, Fozzie the Bear in Muppet Show is just a vaudeville guy, and this now is a baby version of him who's also annoying.
So yeah, he's trying to tell Animal, is like, I'm making a chicken joke, an animated chicken joke, and Animal eats it because this is like the 5th joke about him eating paper.
I do like Fozzie's reply.
Yeah, like he's like, oh, joke bad, and then Fozzie tries to eat the paper, and he says, oh, it tastes pretty funny to me. So
that's good.
Funny
that's
has
cute.
2 meanings, right, kids?
Yeah.
It's another one of those things where it's just like the joke ends, the characters just don't do anything, and then like Skeeter walks by and we follow Skeeter to the next joke. It's like they're passing off a baton. It's like, okay, now it's your turn to go to the next scene.
The camera is another character who's just like walking around from thing to thing, like, well, what do I look at now?
I wonder if that's I mean, obviously there's intentionality in that, but I wonder if that's like a top-down thing, like, let's have a slower show that's more like about observing these characters and not like, fast-paced and action-packed or whatever.
I could see Jim Henson, looking at all the other Saturday morning stuff at the time and thinking, like, you're overwhelming children. Take a little time. Like, give them some space.
So Gonzo, he gets back to the point of this episode. He's like, I'm not even just making my own cartoon. I'm thinking of my own cartoon studio. And we see this fantasy of Gonzo running Gonzo Productions, and all of his coworkers are long dead animators from like the 20s.
Yeah, I think it's got to be from one of the Out of the Inkwell Fleischer Brothers shorts. While there's a Fleischer classic character who appears on screen.
And Coco the Clown is from Out of the Inkwell. Gonzo draws Coco the Clown. We see a bit of footage from Out of the Inkwell. And then Coco jumps off the page in the Muppet Babies cartoon and walks away. And I like how the Japanese animators have to recreate these older cartoons, and they look so cool when they do.
Yeah, that's the funnest challenge in this episode, is these modern then Japanese animators trying to capture the energy and the wildness of these original these early like silent era cartoons. And Gonzo's design, especially with his little hat or visor thing, I think that's like straight up what like Walt Disney would look like in drawings of like early like 20s Walt Disney Studio stuff.
And he's sitting on like an animator's table, and if you look really closely, you can see like storyboards and layouts and stuff and drawings. It looks like someone at Toei literally took a picture of their table, and that was the background. Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah, they use photo referencing quite a lot in this, or just as in putting photos on TV and using that as a background. So I wouldn't be surprised they just use their own. Though it's creepy that he has like a drawing of Piggy closest to his drawing board there.
Let's see, what kind of character will make my cartoon studio world famous? How about a blue weirdo, guys?
No way! Forget it! Give us a break!
Okay, the weirdo's out. I know, I'll draw a mouse. Now, what should I call him? Murray Mouse? Nah. Morris Mouse? Nah, that's not it. I got it! Irving! Irving Mouse! It's got a nice little ring to it. That's pretty good. Hey, come back here! I created you! Oh, a wise mouse, huh? Aha! Now I got him! Wait a minute! I think he's got me!
It's an act break. So
that's an act break.
The mouse draws a hole after... So this is a mouse, by the way. Gonzo draws a mouse. It's like an old, like black and white, old-timey mouse. The mouse draws a hole, jumps into it, and pulls Gonzo in. That's the act break. It's funny that there's like an act break with Peril. Just like, this is his imagination. There's no... He's not going to die.
You know, Gonzo has the least control over his imagination of any of the characters, though. But I love how long they take to get to Irving the mouse instead of, obviously, Mickey Mouse is where you think it's going. Even a little kid has heard of Mickey Mouse and thinks he's going there. So saying Irving the mouse is funny. And also these mice seize the means of production.
It's true. We come back from the commercial, and the mice are basically just replicating themselves, drawing more of them, which essentially an excuse to cut to old footage of black and white old-timey cartoons of mice having fun, right?
A bunch of mice dancing around and on a piano and their pants dropping.
I thought that was a funny joke. Actually, it's kind of sophisticated for 1984 that Gonzo is like superimposed on top of this old footage, and this mouse is like dancing and like shimmying its pants off, and Gonzo's like, I'll have none of that in my cartoon, thank you.
Great.
And they reverse the footage and the pants come back up.
Talk about disturbing animation. Gonzo climbing out of the hole with his nose.
Oh, yeah. It's very prehensile.
Yeah. There's nothing deeper than a cartoon hole.
It's true. I wish they would have explored more of those cartoon concepts in this episode. That Pinocchio thing just ate 6 minutes of this crap.
I know. I wish it was more of the Tiny Toons, cartoon school of explaining all the things. Or there's a Garfield episode that's, actually, it's like easily the best U.S. Acres one because it's barely a U.S. Acres one. But it's like Orson's Cartoon School, and he explains what a wild take is, a double take, all these terminologies.
So yeah, there's a fun bathroom scene because they're just using existing footage of mice having fun in a bathtub. The mice like spray Gonzo with water and squirt him with toothpaste. The mouse will then draw a fire hydrant, and Gonzo gets squirted away. And then finally, there is a standoff.
All right, Irving, that's the last cheese.
Cheese?
I know. With horses, it's the last straw. But these are mice.
We get it.
Irving, give me that pen. Go get him. I get off of this drawing?
You don't. You're a cartoon.
I am? You mean I'm stuck in this cartoon forever?
That's right.
No! Let me out! Let me out! Get me out of here! No! Help! Let me out! I don't want to be in this cartoon anymore! What's your problem, Gonzo? Who? Me? Don't be ridiculous. I don't have any problems.
My favorite line in the show is, I don't have any problems. That's something I say all the time.
I'm not crazy. I don't have any problems. I
laughed out loud. I mean, that was not the intent of that line, but just I like how blunt that is. Like, what's your problem? I don't have any problems.
Gonzo's freak out is great. Rusey does a really good job there, just like having to scream in that baby Gonzo voice.
There's lots of like little, not ad libs, but like little inflections and just acting choices she makes. I think Gonzo is the best acted character in this show.
I love his little tee-hees there of the satisfiedness of drawing the cat. And we get Gertie the dinosaur.
Yeah, that was what scared Gonzo in that clip. So yeah, Gertie, like one of the most famous pieces of animation. It was like a stage show by Winsor McKay, who did the Little Nemo newspaper comic. And he was one of the earliest pioneers in animation.
And now to know what an adult I am, I see these scenes and I just think like, who's going to clean up that ink, Gonzo?
Yeah.
Huh? Is it going to be Nanny? You leaving that to her?
She's got a cleaning crew that shows up after this is all over.
She has to delouse every place animal goes. Also, again, thinking of things they would not get to do in cartoons today. Piggy doing the crazy thing. Yeah.
Gonzo's cuckoo bananas.
You can't do that in cartoons now for good reason.
I guess now it's time for a song. There's no real easy transition into it. Just like, cartoons are fun, and then I have a bit of this song, we can listen to it. I listened to quite a few of these songs in research, and I was like, oh, you know what, some of these are pretty good, and I gotta tell you, for the past 2 weeks I've had the song Good Things Happen in the Dark in my head. I walk around my apartment singing it, and it's a good thing we're in quarantine right now because I'd be intolerable. So let's hear We Love Cartoons.
4, 3, 2, 1. Cartoon time has just begun. We love cartoons. We love all the action. We love cartoons, how they dance and sing. We love cartoons. They're the main attraction. Cartoon heroes can do anything.
I'll be a crazy rabbit.
I'll be a flying squirrel.
I'll eat spinach out of a can.
Just to save some skinny girl.
What? What?
But I like that it's a good moment for Piggy to get jealous. Like at first when I saw that, I was like, whoa, Skeeter's olive oil? And then Piggy pops up to be like, hey, what's going on here? This is wrong.
So it's a nice little 80s tune to clash with the 50s doo-wop theme they've got going on. They work in many different genres.
I would never think of the cartoons as having, cartoons do have action and I love them, but to say we love cartoons, we love all the action, I guess it gives them a new thing to rhyme with every time. They can say main attraction and all that, but I do like the cute designs of all of them, like Betty Boop Piggy and Fozzie as Bugs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of action in this. The lyrics aren't astounding, but there's some cool animation in this where like all of the like appliances in the living room are coming to life. The TV comes to life, almost like some kind of demented Pee-wee's Playhouse, but like Super Kermit, the superhero version of Kermit, saves the day. Piggy threatens she'll draw a scary monster and make it look like you, which she's drawing Skeeter.
That's a danger. If you have a friend who's an artist and you make him mad, you might end up being one of the enemies in their cartoon. So watch out.
And before we move on, I do want to play a bit of that song that's stuck in my head just to show you the power of the Muppet Babies music. So give me 1 second.
Stay in the dark without no reason to ever be afraid. Why don't you take my advice? Nighttime can be oh so nice. Good things happen in the dark.
There would be no drive-in movies without the dark.
Wow. I now, the one that was stuck in my head was the one from the Comic Capers one where it's like, we love the funnies, the Sunday funnies, the fun, and then they'd say, the fun day sunnies. They'd transpose the words.
Well, this is the bridge that's in my head, by the way. Sorry, this is getting indulgent, but I have to tell you what I'm just walking around singing.
There would be no drive-in movies. Good things happen in the dark.
There's a joke about Piggy eating a lot of food. Yeah, I just walk around my apartment going, there would be no drive-in movies. People are calling the cops next door.
So that's an episode about being scared of the dark.
Yeah,
right?
Beakers is so afraid of the dark. I think it's like an early one because Beaker's actually in it.
He's doing things. Yeah, I guess it's hard to write around them. Also Rolf's pretty good at drawing Piggy in this song too. He's easily the best artist in the group. And I did want to shout out to the shot of them at the end where it's all their heads over a star. It reminded me of another reason I loved the Muppet Babies and they introduced me to comic books because some of the first comic books I owned were from Marvel Comics' Star line. They had a Star imprint that was for all of their licensed kid stuff, which included Ewoks comics, Elf comics.
Oh yeah,
and the Muppet Babies.
I had a Muppet Babies comic and also a Foofer comic.
Oh, right. I remember.
No one remembers Foofer.
Yeah, I think I only know him because he's like in the ads next to the Muppet Babies. Like, here's all the Star comics. But and that was the imprint that published the Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider Ham comics when they got started. So yeah, the Marvel Disney Muppety connection has existed for a long, long time.
So the rest of this cartoon is just like a clip showcase, really. Because
once that song's over, they're just kind of killing time.
But I like how it's also like showing kids like, well, here's other kinds of animation. Rolf invents P-animation, which is just the excuse to show this like abstract piece of animation, which is like, what did they just steal from Russia or something? I don't know where this is from.
Yeah, I don't recognize it either, but it must be from some communist country that couldn't sue them for it. Hungary had a real tradition of animation, but I got to compliment the animation team that they snuck in experimental animation like this into a kid show and exposing it to children.
Yeah.
Though definitely when I was a kid and there'd be scenes like this, I would be so bored and likely to change the channel.
I was kind of bored, actually.
Yeah.
Although the computer animation stuff is cool. So let's learn about computer animation with Scooter. And he gets this kind of wrong.
Hey, what are you doing, Scooter? I'm setting up...
Can I just say that, like, all these clips start with, like, hey, what's going on over here?
What's up?
We don't need the person walking over and be like, what are you doing? Jesus, I'm sorry. I know it's for little kids 40 years ago, but seriously.
I guess it's friendly, you know.
Yeah.
It's showing what good manners are.
What are you doing? All right.
Hey, what are you doing, Scooter? I'm setting up the camera so it points at my computer. That way I can turn the still pictures on the screen into computer animation. Oh. Get out of the way, animal. Click the camera, Kermit.
Okay, got it.
All I have to do is keep changing the picture slightly, and it will appear to move. Computers make the best animation because they're so exact and mathematical.
Messy better.
Animal, cut it out. Wow, computer animation is so precise and scientific.
Messy better. Messy better.
Hey, you're ruining my animation, animal.
No. Make better.
So we're doing Talking Mission Hill right now, recording that, and you can just put like Kevin from Mission Hill in this segment, can't you?
You totally can.
Yeah.
He's so like, you're ruining everything. The best thing is because it's exact and mathematical.
And I gotta say, Howie Mandel, good cartoon voices. I almost said good computer voices. I like his animal.
Yeah, his animal is a lot of fun. We don't even get a go bye in this one, but it's.
Oh, there is
really
one.
Good. Oh, there is. Okay.
It's after the credits.
Oh, right.
Which is like, did they cut all those out of the syndicated runs? Because I don't remember them ever being part of the show. But if you go on YouTube, they're the non-syndicated versions, and you have the stinger scene, which is often like 30 seconds long.
I forgot that, I didn't even watch the stinger scene from this one. I forgot that. That's right. There's always a post credits go bye. But this sequence here, I wonder if they knew that this would actually be the future of animation, of people saying computer animation is always perfect and exact, and then it's the battle of, well, yeah, but how about wild creativity that maybe doesn't look perfect?
Good animation is perfect and organized.
You heard him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's weird that there are these politics in this episode where it's like computer animation was just burgeoning. Like, this is the same year John Lasseter did that short with actual character animation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That quick clip there of CGI that they put in, I don't know if it's definitely from Pixar, but I would assume it is, because if Henson has the handshake deal with Lucas for Star Wars clips, why wouldn't he also get it from Lucas's Pixar division in their animation? But yeah. It's shocking to see that animation then, and I guess it is like precise, but it's also just moving around a static thing. It doesn't actually move or express anything.
And Scooter is implying that, like, you take a picture of your monitor for computer animation, which is not the case, but I guess you got to explain it to the kids somehow.
And also all this computer animation talk, it foreshadows a few years later the debut of Waldo C. Graphic, everyone's favorite Muppets.
Oh, nobody liked him.
No, he's no one's favorite.
He is such an 80s looking thing, isn't he?
And he's there forever in Muppets Vision 3D.
Oh, still got to see that. When we can travel again, I'm going to see it.
It's probably a countdown until that Muppet Theater gets bulldozed.
They're burning one Muppet at a time.
They already got rid of it in Anaheim. You got to go to Orlando, and you got to go fast.
So basically, there's a little scene here where they're in the computer, and Animal is like using this army of Fantasia paintbrushes to make everything messy. And then Scooter learns a lesson that maybe everything doesn't have to be exact after all.
I like when he learns that he's freed from his computer prison. He says, maybe it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm free.
Yeah, the perfection was actually a prison for Scooter.
An interesting lesson in a cartoon show to share with people, which I think, when I see people on, say, the Steven Universe Reddit complain about, like, hey, this character's off model. Look how much Peridot shrinks from episode to episode. I'm like, who cares? It was a good show.
I totally agree. So Animal makes a kind of truce with Scooter, although he just smears paint all over him.
Yeah.
And let's hear more about animation.
Hey, Kermit, bring the camera back over here, will you?
Sure thing, Skeeter.
They get along.
Hey, what are you doing with that clay?
I'm gonna do some clay animation. All you have to do is move it a little bit and then snap a frame of film.
Sounds neat.
It is. I'll show you. First, you look at yourself in the mirror to see how your body moves. Ooh, I love doing that.
Me too, Piggy.
Yeah.
Then you move the arm a little.
You mean like this?
Then you move the head a little.
Like this? Oh, I'm putty in your arms, my sweet piglet. Gonzo! Pigs, you can't live with them. You can't live without them.
So she kind of turns him into Gumby, but also that's like she beats up Gonzo and he likes it.
Yes, yeah, that's very weird.
Yeah, and
I guess he is a weirdo.
Something about this like makes me feel like there was like a child psychologist working on the show. It's like, no, every scene needs to start with the character, asking what the other character is doing, and then the consent is given. Like, I will show you what I'm doing, friend. Like, it feels like there's like this weird like child psychology projected onto these characters.
It's kind of rare in this episode you get conflict other than Gonzo versus Piggy. Like, everyone's like, I will tell you, thank you. Like, again, Gonzo shouldn't be so creepy to Piggy when she's made her intentions clear, but the violence she does on him again, like, you would think the child psychologist would tell them not to have that in there. And they straight up just put in a Will Vinton short in here.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. You think it's a Vinton thing?
I saw a Vinton thank you in the credits.
Yeah.
But I mean, it looks just like his stuff. I thought it was from his 1980 dinosaur short, but that scene specifically isn't in it. But
teaching kids about evolution.
Yeah, I know.
Well.
But I think it is. I think it's definitely a scene from a Will Vinton short. And I mean, he's a Portland area animator, probably bros with Henson. I would think he met him at some point.
So yeah, we see this little Vinton thing. It's a cool thing for kids to see in 1985.
Yeah. Oh man, I loved any chance I got to see claymation, like even at a museum. I watched that dinosaur short when I was a kid at a museum. And I think my mom had to it was running on a loop, and I think my mom had to pull me out of the room you have to go now.
I love those.
Watching it.
Love the singing raisins. But yeah, there's a gag next with Fozzie. He wastes everybody's time again and makes tomato animation.
Getting all these tomatoes.
I don't know. It's a bad. It's like, I think actually earlier in the show when he tells a bad joke to the flip book, it throws tomatoes at him, right?
Yeah, most episodes had a tomato in Fozzie's face joke, which those ones would be imaginary, but that tomato he got is just lying around. And again, I have to say, Nanny's not doing a good job here.
And I like how this show ends because it's just I'm tired. Let's end the show.
Yeah, at least Nanny doesn't show up to just say time for nap time.
Yeah, just this premise has been expanded upon enough.
Each Muppet has shown you a cartoon style, and now we're done.
I kind of enjoy just how brazen it is. It's like, that's the end. Okay, we're done.
We switched off the lights. I mean, though this ending here, I do think as a kid, I told you guys before on that G.I. Joe Springfield episode, it freaks me out, the idea of imposters and that is everything a lie? And here we have another Marvel Productions animated show that ends with a child freak out of everything's a lie. It's all been fake this whole time.
It's twisted, man. This ending is twisted. Let's hear it.
I'm getting tired, guys. What do you say we quit for the day, huh? Guys? Huh? Hey! How come nobody's moving? Kermit? Piggy? Ralph? Speak to me! I didn't mean you guys! This is terrible! What have I done? Fooled you!
Pretty funny, huh?
I guess we fooled you, Gonzo.
Who? Me? Nah, you didn't fool me. Did they fool you? Hey!
You zoom out from an animation camera platform, and then Gonzo's on the cell.
I love his hey, as he's turning out. That's funny.
Pretty funny joke when we made you think reality was a lie, Gonzo.
Yeah.
Don't you get it?
We thought we all stopped moving, huh? He lost his mind there. But I forgot that starts with Gonzo saying, pretty tuckered out, guys.
What are we at, 22 minutes, 10 seconds? We got to wrap this up.
Yeah, did we make it that far? Okay, cool. But also, they leave you with Gonzo because he's the funniest.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And then those credits, man, I just love every shot. Them in outer space, the one of Gonzo looking to the camera while singing, that one.
Fozzie looking down a spooky hallway.
Anytime they got to one of those, some of those are just original drawings and not clips, but when I'd see an episode that had a clip from those still shots, I was like, finally an answer. I have this scene.
Gratification.
And also when I hear these ending credits, I think of the anticipation of either watching another Muppet Babies right after or an episode of Garfield and Friends.
Oh man, that would be CBS, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I think that was how I graduated in and grew up of Muppet Babies was written at a certain level, Garfield and Friends a little bit smarter, and then as I grew up, I took steps up the ladder.
The darkness of Garfield needed to carry you there.
He needed to tell me, television actually lies to you. What, Garfield?
Some harsh truths from Garfield. And then after the credits, there's the stinger scene, which I believe these are cut out in the Nickelodeon ones and also syndicated
Gotta
ones.
have more room for commercials.
It's a flip book of Animal waving goodbye, and then we pull back. We see Animal is doing the flip book, and he says "go bye bye" and erases the drawing of Animal on the flip book. Yeah.
Oh man, I hit stop too soon.
Yeah.
I had forgotten.
I would have too, but I'm like, why is there 20 seconds of stuff after these credits? What's going on here?
Once I see that CGI Spider-Man jump up, I'm like, I'm satisfied.
Creepy as hell, isn't it?
Yeah, and whoever that Takashi guy is, he did a good job as creative director.
Takashi.
So, hey.
They can give one Japanese person credit, and it's Takashi.
I'm shocked they even did that in '84. Yeah,
yeah. It's just it's the all-purpose credits. Did Toei do this? Did Acom do this? Who knows? But they're both credited, so have fun figuring it out. But this was Toei.
I mean, it looks much more like a Toei than an Acom for sure.
But yeah, thank you to Alex Irish, because this is a lot of fun, even though this is not, again, made for people in their late 30s in 2020. But it was fun to go back to something that we had a lot of fun with this in our childhoods and even in our young adolescence and throughout the 90s. And you know what? It's fun to go back and watch cartoons. This is not something that you will just put on like an old Tiny Toons or an old, like, even like Pup Named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
It is very much a show for children of that time period. I think it should still be preserved, but I don't see it working outside of that context, honestly.
Yeah, the children of Generation Omega, or whatever we're calling them, like the 5-year-olds now.
We're beyond Zoomers, I guess.
Yeah, I'm saying after Zoomer, this has so slow. It's just too slow for them. And it has some things that you're like, oh, we grew out of this. We know you shouldn't show kids this.
Yeah. Again, it's almost 40 years old, this cartoon.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? God.
I guess, actually, it's older than a lot of the old clips they show in this when they were more than 40 years old then. Yeah. Ugh, crazy.
But yeah, check out whatever you can of Muppet Babies on YouTube, and some of it's there, and you might have fun going back if you're nostalgic like us, but it's not a show that you will just put on at a party or something, like an old Ren and Stimpy or something like that.
Yeah, just joke with your friends about, like, wasn't it crazy that Nanny and never saw her face? Anyway, like, that's all the memories you need.
Even then, I think those jokes were done by like 2006.
Pretty much, yeah.
Whenever Donald Glover had that album, that's the last time. Yeah.
Which... that he's very funny in so many ways, but his joke really was just like, remember that? That was crazy. Like, yeah.
You're right.
Yep.
So thanks again to Alex Irish for being a great patron and recommending Muppet Babies. We had a lot of fun doing it. So if you want to support the show like Alex and get every one of these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And if you sign up there, you'll get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. Once you sign up, you get immediate access to everything we made on Patreon for now more than 3 years. Woo! And that includes all of our limited miniseries, and the most recent of which is Talking Mission Hill. We're going through the entire only season of Mission Hill with the Talking Simpsons treatment, and it's only available at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, along with over 100 bonus podcasts that you haven't heard yet. And Henry can tell everybody out there what's happening at the $10 level. One extra long podcast once a month about a movie that is just for patrons at that level or higher.
That's right. If you go up to $10 a month, you get all that $5 stuff and our monthly What a Cartoon movie. We've been doing it for closing in on our 2nd year here, and it's where me and Bob cover an animated feature film in depth, just in the same style as What a Cartoon, but often twice as long or longer. You get to hear an extended preview every month in your What a Cartoon feed, but if you want to hear the full thing of us talking for, say, 4 hours or more about Toy Story 2, or this month's one for Space Jam, the greatest Michael Jordan commercial a film ever was, you can only hear those in full and over 70 hours of our back catalog if you're a $10 and up subscriber at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and my other podcast, of course, is Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast. Check it out wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts to get 2 exclusive episodes every month. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. I'm always tweeting up a storm on there, and sometimes about even the Muppets. So if you follow me at HENEREYG, you'll stay informed. And speaking of Twitter, please, if you haven't yet, follow the official Twitter account of the Talking Simpsons Network at Talk Simpsons Pod. Anytime new podcasts go up on both the free feeds for What a Cartoon and Talking Simpsons or on the Patreon, you'll learn about it there if you are a follower on Twitter at Talk Simpsons Pod.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time for the preview of this month's What a Cartoon movie episode, and we will see you then.
Take this puppet of wood, string, and cork and turn it into living pork. Va-voom!